Hello, everyone. Today I am here with my friend and fellow coach, trainer, all the things here in Kansas City. I'm here with Sandra Kenly. Sandra and I met, as many of my guests did, last fall at KC Global Entrepreneurship Week. But Sandra and I have kept in touch. We meet once a month. We serve as each other's accountability partners. She basically keeps my head on straight and says, remember, you said you were going to do this. Have you done this yet? Which is super helpful for my ADHD brain and all the things I'm trying to do with my business. So I'm here with Sandra. Sandra, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, probably a little more than that. Tell our listeners who you are. I would love you to share, I know your work stuff, but also you do so many things outside of this business that I think people would like to hear too.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jess. So happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to your listeners and to have this conversation that's so powerful and an important topic to truly talk about. So my name is Sandra Kenly. By corporate background, I actually went to school for supply chain and operations management and wanted and had a further call for purposeful work. And I had experience with coaching, mentoring, and training, and really helping others become better versions of themselves, and really felt like that was a deep-rooted purpose for me on this earth as I walk around in my human form. And so that's really where the birth of my business kicked off. So Invest In You LLC was founded actually here in the state of Missouri. And really we help professionals and entrepreneurs level up in their leadership and their communication, their ability to influence their team, the ability to influence an audience through their communication and speaking one-on-one or to a larger audience. So that's a lot of the purposeful work that I find in my day-to-day. And then outside of that, a handful of years ago, I decided to take the leap into acting. Actually, I had taken an acting class in college and really loved it. So I'm also represented here in the Kansas City area with Exposure, Talent, and Modeling, and then also West Talent in the St. Louis area. And then outside of that, I really enjoy being outside of the 100-degree plus days that we have here in Kansas City. I enjoy going trail hiking, biking with my partner. We're very outdoorsy people. I also like staying active in that regard. So working out, lifting. I was an athlete growing up. So I swam, ran track, played volleyball, all the things. And really, do that for my own wellness and mental health and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit about myself.
Yeah, I wanted you to share the acting piece because I think it's so fascinating. I mean, we both come from those creative backgrounds too. So it's fun to kind of journey alongside on both the business front, but also on those creative pursuits.
Totally.
And for our listeners, as well, you are here in Kansas City, but you have clients and you speak all over. You are not, just limited to the Kansas City area with your work.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know you're always traveling.
Yeah.
Okay. So you founded Invest In You here in Kansas City, where you do a lot of your speaking and training and professional development. Why is that work so needed and important in today's world?
I mean, I feel like I find pride in having a continuous learning and a continuous evolution mindset just as I approach life. And I have also found that by having that energy, it creates a ripple effect with those around you. Like if you have a spirit and an energy to want to be better, naturally it impacts your sphere of influence. And I find it to be important because if we can continue to ripple that in a larger sense and impact those in corporate and running their own business, if you can pass that bug along or help inspire someone else to do that, it truly continues to spiderweb out to their spheres of influence. So having that sense of wanting to be better, it was actually a pretty alarming stat. I went to a conference earlier in March, and just in preparation, I was listening into different podcasts for just conference preparation. And the speaker had said, I want to say it's 7% of people actually have like a personal development bug within them to want to better themselves. So I was just like, wow, that's an alarming percentage of the population. So it's like, if I can be that seed of inspiration for someone to want to be better or to just spark the curiosity, it could truly make a vast and larger impact in the world. So I just find it, if more of us had that sense of curiosity and that sense of continuous learning, I feel like it would help us just continue to evolve and become better as a species.
Yeah, I love that. I am shocked that it's that low.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just because the circles you and I probably run in are a lot higher. I don't know. So I feel like everyone's on this path with me, but 7% is pretty low. That's, that just means there's lots of opportunity for us to do our work, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about what that 93% looks like then. The people who aren't doing it, what, because what I hear is that that's the challenge. The challenge is to tap into and help these people live their best life, thrive, flourish where they are. So what does it look like when you're not doing this kind of work?
So in the lives of those folks, or like it just within my own life? I mean, and I've honestly found myself in these seasons. But there are times in life where you're just kind of going through a struggle or you're going through a rut and you're stuck.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I get out? Or maybe even taking a step back from that, I'm not even realizing the potential trauma or the hole you're in is like your reality. So you don't even know what is the greater possibility that you could be impacting the world or impacting within your life. And, I mean, I've gone through seasons of loss. I've gone through seasons of trauma or like being in a not like healthy relationship, even, and from a romantic sense, and just feeling really stuck. And if it wasn't for like leaning on support or even like knowing that support's out there, because I find even being in that state, you can find yourself in like victim mentality or feeling like you're the only one going through this. I've had conversations with friends or clients where it's like, man, I felt like I was the only one having this experience. And it's like, no, you know what I mean? There's like, there's a sea of people that unfortunately have experienced similar trauma, but have found a way out of it. So I find that it's, I mean, honestly, having blinders up and not realizing, what is outside of the blinders that could be a positive asset in my life, or having the belief within yourself that you are capable of getting out of it. And I find that's a lot with women specifically, especially, I mean, even just being in a very toxic relationship, it's just like, well, how do I speak up for myself? If this man is, saying left and right sideways stuff, or instilling fear within me, how do I actually get out of that? So it's even just kind of being in these blinders, because it's just like, I don't know a way out or have a way out. And I even find that within a job too. It's just like you could be stuck under a micromanaging leader, or you could be a part of a team that is just like, unfortunately, really toxic or doesn't know how to communicate properly. And then it's like, well, I need to keep this roof over my head. I need to keep the food on the table for my family. So then it's like, okay, well, now I'm in this rut professionally. So then, how do we break out? So it's interesting. And I find that it's like, it's seasons. A season could be a couple weeks. It could be a couple years. It kind of just depends on the flow of life. But like the picture behind me as my profile. I think of ocean waves as like emotions and seasons of life. It's like the wave will come up and ebb and flow, but there will also, the tide will rise and then the tide will flow back. So,
yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting. I think there is an epidemic of lack of confidence and us people not understanding the agency they actually have in designing a life they want, right? And designing a job they want or a relationship they want. Like, I know you talk a lot about imposter syndrome, which is also, that in that confidence space. My work is around, the 8 pillars of happiness, and confidence is the one pillar my clients come to me time and time again for that lack of confidence. And I know I've lived that. Like I tell people I had 0 confidence growing up, and I didn't know how to use my voice. And I do think it skews female, but I also think we are just now beginning to normalize these conversations and the vulnerability around this. And I think that's opening it up too for males to step into the space and actually speak their truth as well, because I think there hasn't been a safe space really for anyone to speak this truth.
Right.
But definitely, males, you're supposed to be confident and have it all figured out, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and I also, I had a conversation the other day that was just like, we don't know what we don't know, right? That's the blinders. Like when you're stuck in it, whether it's a toxic relationship or a bad job, when you're stuck in it, your defense is those blinders. And to be truly vulnerable and authentic and say, I need support and help in this way, I need these things, requires you to take those walls down, to look around and say, what do I actually need in this situation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's kind of where we're at today, right? I still can't believe 93% are in the camp of, feeling stuck or complacent. I talk a lot about the opposite of happy is actually not sad, it's complacent. It's feeling stuck and immobilized and like you can't do anything. So I guess let's zoom ahead to the future. What can our world and our collective future look like if we get the other 93% investing in and developing themselves so that 100% of us are showing up as our best selves? What does that look like?
I mean, the first word that comes up for me is like joy and just happiness and living life abundantly instead of in this box or feeling like we need to fit in. I mean, if in the future, people just being their most authentic, genuine, healed self.
Yeah.
Whatever they've like been through in, 2024 and 2050, 2060, it's going through the process of healing and going through the process of just feeling the true light and feeling the true purpose and impact of really just who you are in that, like in that space and living joyfully, because I'm a huge, I feel like spirituality and just like energy is really big for me. So it's just like, it's the state of how you feel. I feel like feelings are a really good kind of like pulse point of how you're responding to the stimulus or the situation that's happening outside of you, and whether it's good or not. But I find that when we're operating out of a state of joy or a state of happiness, that we give ourselves the freedom to be vulnerable, that we give ourselves the freedom to say what we want to say without the fear of being judged or manipulated or I mean, even how like our relationship within ourselves too. So it's not even just kind of the external piece, but it's the relationship of how we can be our own best friend instead of our worst enemy or our worst judge. So I just feel like it would be very light filled and, smiling and just that sense of just like unconditional love that we accept us for where we are and continue to build and expand upon our sense of wanting to learn and kind of diving into that curiosity too. Because when I am feeling, that sense of just like happiness and joy, that having that sense of curiosity of wanting to learn. I recently, I was going through a couple conversations with potential clients, and the conversation of commencement. Oh yeah, and I had also done a commencement speech for it's actually it's an organization called RW2. It's the nation's first Black and women-owned educational nonprofit institution for like IT, cybersecurity, CAD, stuff like that. But I was talking about, when you're in the process of commencement and it's like this sense of just like a new beginning and like a fresh start. And I remember graduating from college with my bachelor's, and I was like, all right, well, here's all my education, but now it's like life university is like here. So it's like, sometimes life of the hard knocks, but it's like finding the silver lining in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love, curiosity is my go-to pillar of happiness. It is one of the, growth happens on the edges of our comfort zone. So curiosity is what gets us to those edges. It's what gets us unstuck and expands to that abundance that you're speaking of. So I love this. Me, I love a joy-filled world where everyone's shining their light. What does this look like? You do a lot of work with businesses and corporations and a lot of training and leadership training. And what does it look like inside the workplace when people are investing in themselves and showing up as their best self?
Yeah, I mean, it comes to communication for sure. And through like crucial conversations where it's like navigating through that in a way where we're not demeaning one another, where we're not having a sense of bias. I recently watched a video just on bias and kind of having an awareness of speaking to one person of one background or a male or a female versus somebody who maybe doesn't identify within the same sexuality as you do, and so on and so forth, relative to just bias. And that has so many background points on that. So we don't have to divulge in that. But when it comes to communication, having a sense of respect, of just like relationship building too. It's just like when you jump on a meeting and it's like, okay, let's cut to the chase or what have you. That doesn't really open up a sense. It's very rigid. So it doesn't really open up a sense of possible creativity to improve a process or to, or how like a leader is working with their team and utilizing their team strengths. It's navigating through, even in my corporate background, I've had a lot of experience through negotiation. There's a way of navigating through a negotiation in a sense that isn't belittling or offending someone. It's the tonality that we use, also the pace at which we speak at as well, that I find we would have a better workforce and corporate environment if we were able to operate in that sense of light, to communicate with one another as a caring human being, and not as a sense that would make a corporate environment, whether it's virtual or in person, feel rigid, feel toxic, and feel like people have to tiptoe. Like that's really unfortunate, where you're working for a company that it's like you feel like you're walking on glass. So you can't really bring up a concern or potentially even bring up an improvement. I mean, I know I've been in a place where it's like, well, I feel like my suggestion isn't even going to be taken seriously anyways, so I'm not going to even bring it up. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people feel that way. So just having a sense of just like a welcoming space where people can feel like they have the creative ability, even in a corporate setting, to be able to have their true voice heard and respected. And then asking thoughtful questions is another thing that pops up for me personally is, I feel like we say seeking to understand, but like, is that something that's actually being abided by and actually being executed? Like, are you asking just because you feel like it, like because you feel like you have to, or is it out of curiosity and wanting to understand a person? So yeah, I feel like communication is really like the foundation of business, really,
Right. Well, what I love about this, so Project More Happy, my business is our vision statement is to design a world that is more just, more sustainable, and more firmly rooted in our shared humanity. And I
Mm.
feel like that's what you're talking about. You're talking about allowing ourselves and everyone around us to show up in their full humanity, to speak to one another, human to human, not necessarily leader to employee, not
Mm.
necessarily, in a meeting. It isn't about getting the work done. It's about getting the work done with the humans that are in the
Mm.
room with you. Is that?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
So how do we, because this is, a question I think on constantly. How do we, from a roadmap perspective, how do we get from today, where honestly we don't really see each other as a human standing in front of us, but we see each other as a ask we need, or
Mhm.
someone who can do something for us. We, not that we use one another, but we see each other for the intent of the transaction, right?
Mm.
How do
Mhm.
we get from here to that future where we are communicating human to human? We are seeing each other and allowing ourselves and one another to be vulnerable and to show up authentically and to
Mhm.
shine our light. How do we get there?
Yeah. I feel like the first thing that comes up for me is the content that we're taking in within. So, I mean, social media is, you could look at it from a lot of senses,
Yeah.
but I think like first and foremost is the content that we're pulling in. Cause I find at least like in the day to day, I'm a like an audiobook listener, podcast. Like that's a lot of the stuff that I intake in terms of just like content, and it makes me feel good. It feels like I'm educating myself and growing my mindset. So I feel like some of the steps or kind of that road mapping is what is the content that you're putting into yourself, and is it fueling you or is it taking from you? Like,
Yeah.
are you feeling depleted, or are you feeling deposited? And I'm finding that most people are feeling depleted. Because of the screen time, how much time we're really putting like into feeding that negative energy or feeling that fueling that depletion, and making the intent to reach out to people and start having authentic conversations, even if it's just a quick like phone call, like, whoa, I haven't heard from you. Actually, I recently, when I would frequent back and forth between Wisconsin and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Kansas City, I would frequent call people that I didn't like reach out to or hadn't really spoken to a lot because of the car time. It was like great
Right.
time to jump on a call. And one of my really good friends, who I haven't talked to her in a really long time, but she has 2 kids under the age of like 5. So it was very quick touch points. And she recently followed up. She's like, hey, I've been meaning to get back to you. And like, I'm on my way to a hair appointment. And that was like her time. Great.
Right.
It was a very
Yeah.
good conversation, but it was a deposit.
Yeah.
And that is just so important but it takes intentionality to do that. I mean, with any change, I feel like the first step is awareness that change is needed, and then from there being educated on what needs to happen. So through fueling yourself with positivity, fueling yourself with things that are going to deposit within you, and then acting. It's intentional action and then learning from it, and then it's kind of this wheel of education, right? So that, I mean, just in terms of the content and how much screen time, so taking the initiative to reach out or like ask a friend to go for a walk, or
Mhm.
reconnect with one of your mom friends or mom and newer friends that like ask her how her business is doing, and grab a coffee. And I feel like the other thing too is just like one type of training I really enjoy doing is a mastermind. And it's truly just a circle of folks, whether it's in person or online, where we're really getting in the nitty gritty of a specific topic of influence, of imposter syndrome, of positive affirmations and positive thinking, of working through like a negative situation or a crucial conversation. How do you navigate through that? So that I find is one of the most powerful and well-received training tools, because I feel like as a collective, I mean, there's so much we can accomplish when we're on the same team, not against each other, and like actually working in cohesion with one another as a collective mind versus just trying to, me. I find that, when you're going through struggle, like the best thing is just to focus on someone else and like sewing into another human being. It's like one of the most rewarding things I find. So
yeah. Well, and again, that's that interconnectedness and the humanity and showing up for one another in our whole humanity. I love is it a deposit or a depletion? I like to talk to my clients about is how you're spending your time serving the life that you want, right? So that's if it is, then you're depositing, right? You're getting what you need to move forward and create the life that you want for yourself.
Yeah.
But if it's not, if you're just endlessly scrolling and it's leaving your energy drained and it's, you feel, you've just been comparing yourself to everyone on your feed, is how you're using that time serving you and the life you want? And if not, what can we do about it? So I love the language of deposit or deplete, right? Because that makes it very specific. I also love that you said you have to act, because I remember we sat in a workshop last fall and it was a bunch of, people in this professional and personal development space. And we were all talking about our inputs. We were talking about, we listen to these podcasts and we take these classes and we're in these masterminds. And someone finally said, yeah, but my issue is, I don't remember how they framed it, but it's like, I don't go and do the things afterwards. And we all sat around going, yep, that's the part. We're so good at like ingesting all this goodness, but actually turning around and acting on it is the only way it's going to make a difference in your life. So we have to take in the goodness, make sure it's deposits, and then do something with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so that leads us great into what are we going to do about this? What can our listeners do to help create this world where we are able to show up in our full humanity? What can they do to get their light out there?
Yeah.
That 93%. What can we have them do?
Yeah. So my recommended call to action is just taking a step at investing in yourself. I mean, really just like starting, I feel like the best investment you can make is within yourself. And the second best investment you can make is within other people. So if it's, getting a credit on Audible, or even going to Goodwill and just taking a look at books that can stem your creativity or to ignite your mind to have this, again, like ripple effect or this energy of just growth in some sense. And I just find, and I mean, there are also like on YouTube, on Spotify, there's a lot of free options of even like a podcast like this, or just resources to sow into yourself first and foremost. I even dare say, take that hike, take that camping trip, go outside and get out in nature. Cause even that is like, it helps like shower you in just releasing anything that isn't serving you. That has been like really big for me. So taking a step at like reconnecting with nature in some sense and just getting out of your house and getting out of your comfort zone. So what you said, Jess, earlier on, growth happens just outside of your comfort zone, which is so true. So I think taking that step to invest within yourself and then just picking up the phone and, giving a call to a family member that you haven't talked to in a while, or, your college friend or your buddy from high school that, has a couple kids you haven't spoken to in a couple of years, but it's just like, it's in those, again, those deposits that will slowly build up to get to a point where you're like, man, in the best way, I don't recognize Sandra from 3 months ago, because it's those small decisions that I made. It's those small deposits that I made that really made a huge impact. And in the best way, I've improved. And in the best way, I can identify myself as a new. And it's really just those small decisions on a day-to-day basis. So whether it's you need to set an alarm on your phone, or you need to literally block it off on your calendar and stay committed to that intentional decision, of going for that walk, or of going and, doing whatever you need to do to deposit within yourself. And I feel like it's those small decisions that can really give us that big wave of joy, of happiness, of having a continuous learning mindset in the future.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I did last week, I took a crash course on how to, I think it was called super productivity.
Yeah.
And my ADHD brain doesn't always work the way I want it to.
Yeah.
But what I did was I said, here are the things that I need to do every week for my business, for myself. And one of them was personal and professional development. So I went last week and I blocked out 3 times every week for me to invest in myself in that way. Because then I can hold myself accountable to it, right?
Wow. That's great.
So one last thing before we wrap up this conversation is, you've been talking a lot about the ripple effect of it all, right? When you invest in you, that creates a ripple effect. And that's how we get the 7% up to 100% that we want. And there's actually been a study in how energy moves throughout social networks. So in person or online. But what it showed is that if you're surrounding yourself with positive energy, if you're living in positive energy, that ripples 3 degrees of separation out.
Wow.
Now the same is true for negative energy, right?
Right.
So if you're feeling very negative, you are actually causing that to ripple out 3 degrees of separation. So it really is true. Like, the best way to make a difference in your community, in your workplace, in your family unit, whatever it is to invest in yourself. Because when you do that, you show up differently, and that really does ripple out and allows everyone else to step into their light.
Yeah. And I think another thing is, like, what are you expecting? Because I find is, if I'm expecting my partner to not do something I asked him to do, or if I'm expecting my friend to not show up for me, or if I'm expecting myself to fail at this interview, that's not setting yourself up for success or your sphere of influence or household either. So the power of expectation as well. Hey, they may not meet you fully to what you were hoping for, what you were expecting, but it's like, hey, I'm expecting to have a good day. I'm expecting to feel good. It's just, it's even that sense of what is your expectation and your baseline. So it's like, okay, well, if I'm feeling a little negative, what can I do to at least just level set? Like at least just be level. Maybe I'm not feeling like I'm on cloud 9.
Right.
Like, how can I at least just get out of that funk or get out of that stink? And that's the like quick step outside, or that's the 3 deep breaths. That's the grounding yourself, like in the grass. That's the I even just like taking a second to just sit at the kitchen table and just drink a cup of coffee or water, like feeling the warmth, like just it's in those like simple moments that can just like elevate you just a little bit. But it's just that little, again, going back to those like little things that we do even within our day, where it's like, okay, I'm not really feeling well too. And even that goes back to communication. And even if you're not, like, you're just having one of those rocky days, like, hey, hey, honey, just to let you know, I'm going through this internally right now. So then at least they know too. Because then the other thing, to your point, is like the 3 degrees. I could say something sideways to my partner, and then that jacks up his day. So it's like also just communicating, like, hey, if you're finding yourself in that rut a little bit, like, hey, hey, honey, just so you know that, like, this is what okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. Even just like those small things could make a monumental impact in how the day's going.
Well, it's funny because we are not mind readers.
Yeah.
And yet we assume everyone else in the world can read our minds and give us exactly what we want. So that's that expectation setting. I also think I'm going to point out, because there is science behind what you just said, in that when your expectations are for good or for positive, what you're actually doing is you're telling your brain to look for those as proof.
Mm.
So when you're saying this interview is going to go terribly, you've told your brain that that's what you want it to look for. That's how you become self-fulfilling prophecies. So an exercise I do regularly with people, I did it in my class last night, but it is, start each day by claiming that it's going to be a good day. So you say, today is going to be a good day because, and you choose something, today's going to be a good day because I'm talking to Sandra on the podcast, right? So then even if other things go wrong, my brain's already going, we've had a good day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I gave it something to look forward to that I knew was going to happen. And all our brains are doing is saying, okay, this is important to them. Point it out every time it happens. So when we speak positively about what we want, we're telling our brain to look for all the good in the world around us.
Wow.
So it's actually, you were saying it and it's spot on, but it's actually how our brain works, which makes it even, you can hack your brain to look for all the good and the positive experience.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great. So anything else you want to share with our listeners or tell them before we jump off here?
Yeah. What a profound conversation. Just once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on here. And yeah, it's incredible. I would love to connect. I do a lot of my social media marketing and outreach via LinkedIn. So feel free to connect via LinkedIn. And yeah, I think the last point is just like, we all have light within us, and, we can continue to fuel that light by the people we surround ourselves with, by the content we're putting in our mindset, by how we're talking to ourselves. And I just encourage all the listeners tuning in today to continue to fuel that fire. And if you're not feeling it, finding support to help others fuel you in your journey through walking through that, because we do all have seasons of that, and not shaming yourself if you're finding yourself in that season at this point. So just continue to fuel your light, be that ripple effect in your sphere of influence, in your circle, because people will remember that. People remember how you make them feel at the end of the day, for the good or the not good. People remember how you make them feel. So I really try my best intentionally to make people feel good after any conversation I have with them.
Yeah. I love that. So what we're going to do is y'all are going to go out and you're going to fuel your light. I'm going to share Sandra's LinkedIn page in the description here, so you guys can go and connect with her. She has great content. She shares so much wisdom in that space. So go and do it. She does videos. She does, posts, photo posts, all the things. And she is one of my biggest cheerleaders. That's just who she is. I'm sure she'll be that way for anyone who connects and goes into her sphere of influence. Thank you so much for sharing your light with us today. Yeah, I can't wait to talk again about all of this.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.